You see it in the headlines all the time, right? The tension, the mistrust, the constant threat of conflict between the US and Iran. But here's the thing you might not know. It wasn't always like this, not even close. They were actually allies. So what on earth happened? Let's get into it.
Yeah, really? How did it all go so wrong? How does a partnership just completely fall apart and turn into decades of hostility? That's the big question we're going to tackle. We're going to trace the exact moments that turned these two from friends into bitter enemies.
All right, so to really understand this, we've got to go back. And our story starts where, let's be honest, a lot of stories in the Middle East start, with oil. We're talking about one single event back in 1953 that basically poisoned the well for generations to come.
This event has a name, Operation Ajax. So here's what went down. In 1953, Iran had a democratically elected leader, Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, and he had a pretty popular idea. Iran's massive oil wealth, it should probably belong to, Iranians, not foreign companies. So he nationalized the oil industry, while the US and Britain were not happy about that. In response, the CIA and British intelligence literally staged a coup. They kicked him out and put the pro-Western king, the Shah, right back on the throne.
And you have to understand, for so many Iranians, this wasn't just some abstract geopolitical move. This was a foreign power coming in and overthrowing their democratically elected leader. That one act, it planted these deep, deep seeds of resentment that would just simmer under the surface for decades.
And that resentment, it didn't just go away. Nope, it just sat there, simmering for 26 long years, and then it finally exploded. And when it did, it led to an event that completely changed the map, the 1979 Iranian Revolution.
All that anger against the Shah, who, let's face it, many saw as basically a US puppet, it just boiled over. He was forced to pack his bags and get out of the country in '79, and that left this huge power vacuum. And who stepped in to fill it? The exiled religious leader Ayatollah Khomeini. He came back and created a whole new system of government, an Islamic republic, founded on principles that were, by their very nature, completely against American influence.
Now, this next number, for a whole generation of Americans, it's just burned into their minds. 444. That's how many days 52 American diplomats and citizens were held hostage when Iranian students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran.
And the hostage crisis, that was it. That was the point of no return. It just shattered whatever was left of the relationship. Diplomatic ties were cut, and honestly, they've never really been put back together since. This was the moment things got official. The US and Iran went from being, awkward ex-partners to just straight-up adversaries.
And from there, things just got worse. The hostility only grew deeper over the next decade. The 1980s were dominated by this brutal, devastating conflict, the Iran-Iraq War. And, you guessed it, the US had a major part to play in it.
So on the surface, officially, the United States said, hey, we're neutral in this awful war between Iran and Saddam Hussein's Iraq. But behind closed doors, it was a totally different story. The U.S. was secretly feeding intelligence and support to Iraq because they saw it as a way to keep the new revolutionary government in Iran in check.
So for the leaders in Iran, this was all the proof they needed. America wasn't just some rival anymore. It was an enemy, actively working to undermine them. And that belief, it really cemented a worldview in Tehran that, frankly, is still very much alive and well today.
Okay, so let's fast forward a bit. We get into the 21st century, and the nature of the conflict starts to change. The new central flashpoint? It's all about Iran's nuclear program. And this is an issue that has pushed the two countries right to the edge of war more than once.
And man, the last couple of decades on this front have been a total roller coaster. In the 2000s, tensions were just through the roof over this nuclear program. But then in 2015, something amazing happened. A huge diplomatic breakthrough, the Iran nuclear deal. Basically, Iran agreed to limit its nuclear activities, and in return, it would get relief from these awful economic sanctions. For a minute there, it really looked like a path away from conflict. But then, just 3 years later, the US just pulled out, by itself, tearing the whole thing up.
And the fallout? It was instant. Those crippling sanctions snapped right back into place, and military tensions in the Persian Gulf just skyrocketed. That little glimmer of diplomacy? Poof, gone. The standoff was officially back on.
And that, pretty much, brings us right up to today. So after all these decades of conflict, where do things even stand? Well, the future is anything but certain. The last few years, the 2020s, have really been all about what the US calls its maximum pressure campaign. So what does that actually mean?
It means devastating sanctions that have just crushed Iran's economy. It means high-profile assassinations. And it means this constant, tense game of geopolitical chess being played all across the Middle East. It's like a permanent state of low-key conflict.
You know, there's a quote that just sums this whole thing up perfectly. From allies to adversaries, the story of the United States and Iran is one of oil, power, revolution, and geopolitics. I mean, that really says it all, doesn't it? Every single thing we've talked about is just another thread in that complicated web.
So here's why all of this really matters, the key takeaway. Understanding this whole history, from that coup in 1953 all the way to the collapse of the nuclear deal, it's not just some history lesson. It is the essential backstory. It's what you absolutely need to know to even begin to understand one of the most tense and important conflicts happening in the world right now.
And all of this leaves us with a huge question. After more than 70 years of this baked-in mistrust, is there any way back? Is there a path away from the brink? Or is this cycle of conflict just doomed to repeat itself? For now, nobody knows the answer. And that's the really scary part of a story that is still shaping our world every single day.